That's right. War. Bad. Not a fan of war. Boo! War! Maybe we can find a more complex point to land on, but for now, I think that's a fair statement. Anyway, commenting on the war, trying to make sense of it, and putting forth possible solutions brings with it some problems. Because Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a situation none of us can do anything about on the individual level. We can donate to humanitarian efforts, sure, and we of course should, but we're otherwise stuck hoping for whatever outcome is going to result in the least amount of destruction, displacement, and death. The only thing we're really left to do is comment, release a meme, change our profile picture to a Ukrainian flag, Twitter mute the name Sean Penn, post a statement, say something. And for the first time in what seemed like a while, at the very start of the invasion, there wasn't even a lot of fighting among America's political parties. The absence of a clear division between what the left and right thought about the issue led to some fun short-circuiting amongst several grifters who had no obvious way to politicize the issue. For example, the up-and-coming dipshit J.D. Vance initially took this bold stance on the issue.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. I do care about the fact that in my community right now, the leading cause of death among 18 to 45-year-olds is Mexican fentanyl that's coming across the southern border. I'm sick of Joe Biden focusing on the border of a country I don't care about while he lets the border of his own country become a total war zone.
The Republican candidate for the Senate election in Ohio would go on to double down on this Ukraine policy, weirdly using it as a way to talk about Mexican fentanyl, up until one of his fellow GOP opponents played the masterful move of actually saying something about the country and releasing a statement of support on Twitter. This prompted Vance to realize that he was actually supposed to have an educated or any opinion on foreign policy, to which he quickly did a 180 and put out a statement of his own, highlighting how much he definitely cares about the people of Ukraine. Much like his opponent, his statement perfectly manages to be drenched in partisan spittle as Vance credits the strength of Donald Trump's presidency as, I guess, the reason Putin didn't invade earlier. Donald Trump being a man that Vance initially called reprehensible and wrote an entire op-ed about him being bad until furiously backpedaling the moment he ran for Senate because J.D. Vance is basically just a mid-tier Succession character. And while we're on the subject, if you're wondering if Trump also had no fucking clue what stance to take on Ukraine, the answer is yes.
I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right.
Well, my reaction is it's so sad because this would have never happened. If we had the Trump administration, there was no chance that this would happen, and I know him well, and this was not something that was going to happen at all. And
oh, Putin, you savvy genius, doing a horrible, no good peacekeeping that's still very bad, but also something we should do at our own border with our peace tanks. That's our Trump, the guy who had an entire impeachment for withholding aid to Ukraine, the guy who, just last week, publicly asked Putin to use this war with America to release dirt on Biden in order to help his party. Just doing a little casual treason, I guess. What an absolute treasure. No notes. But these aren't the only two sweaty wads that had absolutely no business weighing in on this war, which is why, within the span of like 24 hours, we saw people suggesting that it was caused by dark psychic forces, that everyone should just chill out and enjoy the apocalypse vibes, that the conflict can only be understood in terms of Star Wars characters, or Marvel characters, or in terms of a superhero you yourself play on TV, or that the war was caused by US inclusion initiatives, or trans people, or that you think it was somehow caused by trans people. It was both pretty fucking embarrassing and extremely typical for social media. And I guess that brings us to perhaps a more honed in premise for this video that we would call our society has adapted, especially online, to favor knee-jerk reactions that fit into our already existing discourse. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, setting off unknown geopolitical forces that could shape the next several decades of foreign policy decisions, might, just might, not be about vibes or fandom or Mexico or whatever bullshit culture war thing you are trying to fight today. Hell, a cringy poem about how Vladimir Putin probably wasn't loved enough as a kid is among the least of our problems, especially with the amount of confusion and misinformation that became rampant in the days after the invasion. For example, this Ukrainian tank that racked up millions of views on TikTok is from 2014. This guy singing Endless Love is not Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that Ukrainian girl confronting a Russian soldier was actually a 12-year-old Palestinian girl confronting an Israeli soldier a decade ago. And once that was revealed, it magically ceased to be powerful or shareable, I guess. Funny how that works, and more on that later. One of the most shared stories in the early part of the war concerned the so-called Ghost of Kyiv, an ace Ukrainian fighter pilot who supposedly shot down at least half a dozen Russian planes within a few days of the start of the invasion. The widely shared video, however, was fake, created in the video game Digital Combat Simulator world, and there's been no confirmation that any single fighter pilot exists. In the days that followed, a number of other posts popped up purporting to reveal the Ghost of Kyiv's identity, or at least suggesting that he really did exist. The Ukrainian military hasn't confirmed the pilot's existence, though they certainly haven't shied away from using the mysterious character to promote a narrative. What makes the Ghost of Kyiv story so interesting is that it's not just made up out of nowhere. Ukrainian pilots and anti-aircraft defenses have shot down plenty of Russian jets, and there may very well be one individual responsible for a huge chunk of those. Like many of the other sick memes of the war's first week, this wasn't a nefarious piece of misinformation, but rather emerged out of half-truths and potential truths, and then morphed into effective propaganda, turning a disturbing situation where people are literally shooting each other out of the sky, war stuff, into a simpler, more cohesive narrative with a single hero fighting evildoers. And of course, we want this to be true. It's been admirable to watch the spirit of the Ukrainian people in resisting what Putin likely thought would be a cakewalk through Easy Street just at the corner of Child's Play Avenue. You know the one, across from the park, which Putin thought this would be a walk through. Like taking territory from a baby. And while yes, the Russian forces are the aggressors here, and we should hope for nothing less than their immediate retreat from a sovereign nation, we should be wary of social media's ability to warp the narrative into a David versus Goliath, or a David versus aliens, or David versus Kevin Spacey, or David versus Kevin Spacey, or a David versus aliens, or David versus humans via aliens storyline that can vilify a huge group of people with those classic David allegories, especially when a big chunk of the aggressor's military may not want to be fighting at all, and a huge portion of the Russian population has been fed so much bullshit that they don't even know what the reality of what's happening is. But that's just what we do these days. We take all the world's complex events and jam them through our collective and often Western-focused good versus evil culture. So yeah, of course the following video exists. Yeesh. Also, oof. Plus a wowzer or two. Even an but I do get it. Who doesn't want to think of Zelensky as Captain America and Vladimir Putin as Thanos? Probably Vladimir Putin, actually. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, certainly. But that's kind of it. And yet, this is an act of aggression from Russia that is killing thousands and displacing millions. The movie about time-traveling war gods fighting a space cult can't possibly reflect any reasonable opinion about it, through no fault of its own. It's not why they wrote that scene. And the truth is that war is simply too complex and life-shattering and overwhelming to be reasonably boiled down into snappy tweets and reactionary memes, which you can argue is all that social media is really good for. War isn't viral content, but that's all it can be when reduced to Twitter's level. So we can't look for solutions on a platform that was in no way designed to provide them. That's like asking a swarm of bees for stock tips. Add to this the feeling of shared helplessness that comes with witnessing atrocities half a planet away in the same breath that you're seeing a viral clip of Anne Hathaway on the Kelly Clarkson show, and you get to an uncomfortable place where everyone feels strongly compelled to post through it, even though we're not the people going through it, and the it is a fucking war. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.